Hey everyone, as promised last week, for today's video, I'm going to show you a small prototype I'm building around multi-agent workflows. The use case is for the agentic graph to build a UiPath workflow by following an end-to-end automation lifecycle, project lifecycle, primarily analysis, design, and build. So now, let's dive into it. Again, this is just a prototype, so I'm running this via VS Code with my Python workspace right here. So first I want to show you what the overall agent graph looks like and what are the different roles or nodes that are interacting from within this graph. So in the graph, you can see there are nodes and edges. So nodes are these different boxes right here, and the edges are the lines, dotted and solid lines. So the nodes are the different roles that this multi-agent system represents. So these are the what we call hierarchical teams right here, where you have the supervisor, which is basically the router of a task and determines which agent will act next depending on the current state of the graph. And you have these different roles like there at the bottom, like such as business analyst, solution architect, and developer, which will perform the execute the task based on the goal that you provided using the tools that they were provided as well. So the edges or the lines right here, so the dotted lines again represents how the supervisor will determine which user or team member to act next, and the solid line would represent that each of the members would report back to the supervisor or the router after they have executed a task, so that the supervisor can determine whether it will finish or call another team member to do a specific task. And as I mentioned, each of the agent, like for example the business analyst, has a specific role in this multi-agent workflow. Business analysts can read and understand the business requirements, search the web using the tool, Tavily tool, which is a search engine that's optimized for large language models. And its goal is to determine the feasibility of the automation and provide a refined requirement to the solution architect and eventually the developer. And of course, it has access to a method, read document, to read the Word document or PDF, PDD file or requirements document that we will be providing in the prompt. So these tools are created as an OpenAI functions and bounded to the large language model. And so that's how it is able to leverage, each agent is able to leverage these tools. So the next agent is the solution architect, which can understand the refined requirements from the business analyst and also has access to the search engine to search for the automation best practices and provide the technical design to the developer, that to be quote unquote, that to be process. And lastly, the developer agent, which is the one that will actually build the workflow in XAML format by also be able to read the automation template that was provided in the project and also be able to write the script again in XAML format, and will provide essentially the automation workflow, which is the output of our multi-agent system. Right? And as you can see here as well, there's a supervisor agent, which is essentially the router and determines which task or which agent to perform the next set of actions, and essentially managing the whole team, right? So enough with these details. I'll just go over through the use case or example that we'll be running with. So this is the PDD that we will be providing for the agent graph to build the automation workflow. So this will be essentially the requirement. So you can see it's a full-fledged PDD to do supplier update for this fictional system, Acme system. So what our prompt will look like is this. So you can say create a UiPath workflow or analyze, assign, create a UiPath workflow for the automation requirement in the file, then referencing the PDD that I just showed, supplier update document. And then each of the steps will just be streamed and output in here in our log console. And let's see how it goes. So first, business analyst will read the supervisor determines that the business analyst needs to act first to understand the requirements, and then goes back to the supervisor for the next step. And I will show all of this, what happens in the back end using Langgraph in a bit. Then finally, it determines that developer has all the details that it needs to create the workflow, and so the developer has access to this automation template. So great. So based on our prompt or goal, so the agent graph, the multi-agent system, was able to create the automation by providing the reference to the PDD and following the analysis, design, and build lifecycle of automation. But what did really happen in the back end? But before I show that, so this is the automation XAML file that was created here. So what really happened in the back end? So we can inspect that using Langgraph. So this is connected to Langsmith, which is a monitoring and LLM observability tool that's provided by Langchain. So it can be able to show you what happened, what are the inputs and output coming from an agent graph or a simple LLM calls or LLM chain. So this is the latest run that we have. So as you can see, first it routed to the supervisor, our input prompt, and it was able to determine that the next role is business analyst that it will call. And then the business analyst has the this is the output from the business analyst, which is the summarized or refined version of the requirements. So essentially what it did is, so the LLM, given the tools that was provided to the business analyst, which is the read document and tabulate search results as a search engine, it was able to know that the business analyst has to read the document, provided this parameter, and then it executes the read document tool, and then essentially use the LLM again to do or refine the summary and summarize the requirements, which is the rendered output here. Then it goes back to the supervisor, determines the next, based on the output from the business analyst, it determines the next role or next person to act, which is the solution architect, and then solution architect creates the to be process. So this is the rendered output from the solution architect. Detail steps, initialization, get transaction data, process transaction. So essentially the design on what the developer needs to do for the end-to-end process. And then it routes back to the supervisor, determines if it has achieved already the initial goal, which is not yet because the last output is coming from the solution architect, which is only the design. So now it is able to determine that it needs to route it to the developer, and then the developer uses read automation template to have a baseline workflow before building the actual workflow, and then writes the automation script into a XAML file, and then essentially provides the final output of the automation, which is the XAML file that you just saw. So this is a quick demo, quick and dirty implementation of how an agent graph looks like, or a multi-agent system workflow looks like, with different team members in a hierarchical team. And this can also be done in a single agent system, but what multi-agent system provides is you can segregate different roles, as you can see here, and provide them different sets of tools, so they and the router or the supervisor will be able to easily determine which user or person can perform a specific task and be able to efficiently manage the workflow. So if I ask it a simpler question, like just what's the weather today? So there you go. So it didn't need the other roles. The supervisor didn't need to call the other roles, because this is just a simple question that doesn't really require the tools that are available for the other users. So the business analyst just use the search engine to provide the information back to the user or output. So that's it for today's demo, and I hope to see you again on our next video. Hope you learned something from this video, and see you again, everyone. Bye bye.